Good evening from the Ozark foothills of northeast Arkansas. This is Midnight Frequency Radio, and I'm your host, Carl Richardson. For thousands of years, humanity has asked the same haunting question. What happens when we die? Is consciousness extinguished like a candle in the dark? Or does some part of us continue beyond the limits of the physical world? Across culture, religion, and generations, stories of near-death experiences, spirit encounters, reincarnation, and journeys into the afterlife have challenged everything we think we know about existence itself. Tonight's guest has spent years exploring these mysteries, not through blind belief, but through investigation, research, filming, and personal experience. Our guest this evening is author and award-winning filmmaker Richard Martini. Richard has written and directed 9 independent films and worked as a freelance journalist for publications including Variety, Inc., and Premiere Magazine. He's also a graduate of the prestigious Masters of Professional Writing program at USC. But it was a deeply personal event that led Richard down a path unlike any he had traveled before: the death of a soulmate, followed by a vivid dream encounter that would forever change his understanding of life, death, and what may await us on the other side. This extraordinary experience became a spark behind the groundbreaking nonfiction book FlipSide, a tourist guide to the afterlife. Driven by questions that many of us have quietly wondered about, Richard embarked on a worldwide search for answers. His journey took him into deep Tibetan philosophy, through India and Tibet while filming documentaries, and eventually into the fascinating work of the Newton Institute, founded by renowned hypnotherapist and author Michael Newton. Along the way, he examined reports of life between lives, past life memories, soul groups, consciousness beyond death, and the possibility that our reality is far more complex than we've been taught. Tonight, we'll discuss Richard's personal experience, the research behind his work, what hypnotic regression sessions may reveal about the afterlife, and whether consciousness survives the death of the body. We'll also explore the idea that this world may only be one chapter in a much larger journey of the soul. So settle in wherever you may be listening around the world tonight, pour another cup of coffee, and keep your mind open, because the mysteries of the afterlife may be closer than we think. Richard Martini joins us right after this. Looking for a portable radio that has slip into your pocket? Take a look at the CC Pocket AM/FM Nowhere Weather Radio plus alert with clock and sleep timer. We combine ease of use, very good reception, and sharp, well-defined audio together in this little jewel of a radio. You can listen on the built-in speaker or the included high-quality original CC Bud earphones tuned for superior voice quality and music. It has 5 one-touch memories, R-type buttons for each band, and stands upright when needed. To get your CC Pocket Radio, you can call 1-800-522-8863 or visit us on the web at ccrane.com. Once again, that's ccrane.com.
You're listening to Midnight Frequency Radio with Carl Richardson, exploring the unknown on the Nightwatch Digital Network. Now, here's Carl.
Here I am indeed with our guest, Richard Martini. Richard, welcome to Midnight Frequency Radio.
Well, thank you, Carl. I am so honored to be here. I really appreciate it. I know a little bit about your background. We talked a little bit about you before the show. But I just want to say I've been to Arkansas. My dear friend Sally Kellerman was from the other side of the state in Portland, Arkansas. And then I wrote a movie called Three for the Road, which got made in Little Rock with Charlie Sheen and Alan Ruck. And so I did come down and I got to visit the set and I got to have some of the best catfish I've ever had in my life. So I'm a fan.
Well, you know, Arkansas is a beautiful place, but our foods are the worst thing you could eat. Like you say, I love fried southern catfish, and that will make you fat in a New York minute.
Oh, is that what happened to me? All right, very good. No, I think it's also very interesting that you have a connection to Art Bell. And my connection to Art Bell is remote, but at the same time, very unusual. And some years ago, I got a call from Art's producer, Heather Wade, and at the time when he was like the last years of his show, and she said, Art heard you on Coast to Coast, he wants you to come on his show. And I was like, oh great, that'll be fantastic. And I had heard Art back in the day driving to San Francisco from Los Angeles or back and forth, however it was, on the freeway. And I must have driven by Pahrump, a number of times, but still I was familiar with the show, and I thought, oh, great, that'll be interesting. And this was right around 2011 after my book, FlipSide, had come out, A Tourist Guide on How to Navigate the Afterlife. And but what happened was Heather called me up and said, at the last minute, he's decided he doesn't want to do the show with you. Oh, really? But I'm going to do the show with you. And I thought, oh, that's great. And so we did a 2-hour show, and I don't think I'd ever done this before, but she was asking me about what I was doing as of late, and it was doing guided meditations with people, where I'm sure you're familiar with the term. I had just finished filming. I filmed about 200 hypnosis sessions with Michael Newton-trained hypnotherapists and others, where people were saying the same things about the afterlife. And of course, when I first came across Michael's work, I thought, is this possible? What's going on? And as you mentioned in the intro, my close friend Luana Anders, an actress, been in over 100 movies and TV shows, she passed away and started visiting me. And at first I thought, well, that must be my imagination, wishful thinking. But then she started showing up to other people that I know, and they would say the same things. They would say, oh, I heard her say this. I saw her doing this. I thought, well, that's strange. How can she see us and we can't see her? And she had told me as she lay dying that she had this recurring dream that she was going to what she said was another universe. She said, I keep seeing myself in a classroom where everyone's dressed in white, and they're teaching something about spirituality. And she said, they're speaking a language I'd never heard before, but somehow I feel like I completely understand. I thought, oh, that must be the morphine trip, something, hallucinating from the drug she was on. But the night she passed away, her close friend called me and said, I had this great dream about our friend Luana. She said, in the fourth dimension, in a classroom, dressed in white. And everyone in there was dressed in white. And she seemed really happy. And I turned to the hospice care nurse. I said, how about this? And she nearly fainted and said that was her recurring dream. I heard about it all the time. So years later, I picked up a copy of Michael Newton's book, Journey of Souls. And in it, he mentions, like one of the first cases, this is a guy who under hypnosis, and they do like 4 to 6 hours of hypnosis, he saw himself in a classroom in the afterlife, and everyone was dressed in white. And I thought, oh, maybe this is how I can find my friend. And so I called up the Newton Institute and said, I'm a filmmaker, and I've, written and directed regular films. Like I say, Three for the Road, Charlie Sheen movie. But this was, I thought, a documentary. I'll go and interview Michael Newton. They said, oh, no, he's retired. But we're giving a workshop in Chicago, my hometown. And I thought, well, okay, I'll go there and I'll see what's going on. And they allowed me to come in return for giving them footage of what I shot, which was their workshops. I could then see what was happening. And so I began filming. And at some point they said, Michael said, why don't you do your own session and why don't you film it? And I thought, oh, great. This is a perfect way for me to prove this to be wrong or false. I wasn't convinced. I hadn't convinced myself anyway, that I could be hypnotized. I'm, an active brain fellow like yourself. Things are happening. What's going on. But I thought, sure, I'll try that out. And I was determined that no matter what happened, I wouldn't make something up, because that's always the bugaboo, the bias involved, because the hypnotherapist wants you to have a past life regression and you want to have. So I just decided whatever I saw, if I didn't see anything, I'd say it for 4 hours. I was happy to do that. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. But 20 minutes into it, the hypnotherapist, Jimmy Kwas out of Easton Hypnosis in Maryland, he said, just look down. I was saying, I don't see anything. I see nothing. He said, well, just look down. And I saw my feet in a creek. And from there, I saw a lifetime and a journey and a path. And from there, when the session was over, I walked out of there, I felt like the earth had shifted on its axis. Because all the things that other people reported, councils and teachers and guides and loved ones, my friend Luana, seeing her in a classroom in the afterlife, going to visit all these different things and places, I had the experience. I like to say to people, listen, if you haven't had an experience, you haven't had one. It's like skydiving. Everybody has an opinion about skydiving until they step out of the plane. And then once they step out, it's an experience.
It's a wake-up call.
Well, and it's something that they've had that nobody else has had, but they've had it. I mean, it's either they feel like they're falling, they feel like they're flying, they feel like they're swimming through air. That's a personal experience. So other people can't claim that they didn't have the experience. They did. And people have had the experience of talking to people on the other side who are still in existence. They've had the experience of seeing people. They've had the experience of learning new information, and that's the key. It couldn't be cryptomnesia or something you heard or made up if they're giving you something new. Oh, the car keys are in the trunk of the car. That's where you need to look, those sorts of things. And I've been cataloging those things for the past 20 years. So in essence, I've filmed over 200 hypnotherapy sessions. And then a medium reached out to me who works for the FBI and LAPD and NYPD, some law enforcement agents on missing person cases. She reached out to me, and Jennifer Schaefer, and about 10 years ago, we started filming our lunches together. She was like a cell phone to the other side. I mean, I could just say, and Luana showed up, and Michael Newton showed up. People would show up at our lunches, and she'd say, so-and-so is here. And I'd say, like, where? And then she'd say, well, they want to ask you this, or they want to say that. And by virtue of me not disbelieving and not believing, I was able to ask her questions. Oh, really? So what happened on this day? Or what did this event happen? And I'm a person who likes to ask questions. And so going back to Art Bell, so this session that I did with Heather Wade on her show, like I say, it was 2 hours long, and she had an amazing ability. She had never done hypnosis before. I wasn't hypnotizing. I was just doing a guided meditation. And she was able to talk to guides and teachers and all kinds of unusual stuff. Now, in the interim, 2 years later, Art had passed away. And she reached out to me and said, I'd like to do another show. And I thought, well, let's just see. Maybe she has the ability. She knows Art. So, maybe it's possible. I didn't say that to her, but so we did the show live. And on this show, I said, is it possible for us to talk to Art? And she gasped and said, I was afraid you were going to say this to me. And I said, well, let's just try. And we had a conversation with Art. That's all I can put it is. She saw him clearly. He showed her things like she had fallen and broken her ankle. and he showed her how he had been trying to help her foot at the time, and she now live on the air said, I felt somebody holding my foot and I didn't know who it was, and he's showing me it was him. And she went down this path, and I then said, so Art, what are you doing on the flip side? Like, what people talk about, like, what once you cross over, you're met by your loved ones and friends and people like that. And then, of course, you have time to do whatever it is you like to do. And he said, I've created a radio station. Now, this relates to what we were talking about before we went on the air, where you and him, he was trying to fix like a television set in the Philippines.
Yeah.
He said, I create a radio station, but it's analog. So I have to remember all the wires, all the plugs, all the circuitry, and then I put this radio station together so I can create an on-air experience. And I said, well, what do you do? Or do you just speak, or do you play music? He said, I play music all the time. And I said, are you using cassettes? Are you using CDs? He said, I'm using my memory, songs that I remember, and I play them. I said, what's the throw? What's the audience? Are you getting a big... He said, no, that's not the point. The point is I'm doing something I really enjoy doing. And he has to create the entire construct. And now this is where it gets a little unusual and interesting. I said, so who are you seeing over there? And he said, I see my friends. I see the people that I used to have on the show. I see Father Martin. I said, okay. And that's interesting. I said, who else? He said, I see Whitley. And Whitley Strieber, as you know, the guy who wrote Communion, they were great friends. Whitley's still on the planet. And I said, well, what do you do when you see Whitley? He said, I go over to his house and I play cards with him. Now, I've heard this before, not just from Art, but I've heard people talk about playing games with other people on the flip side, cards. But you have to create the deck. You have to create everything, the table, the chairs, the beer, the cigarettes, anything. It has to be created just the way we mentally create things in dreams. So it's created. And I said, so is Whitley aware of you playing poker with him? And he said, no, absolutely not. When he wakes up in the morning, he completely forgets what happened. Now, cut to last year, about this time, Contact in the Desert was going on. I was backstage on a panel with Whitley. So I pulled him aside. Whitley, we never met. I just want to tell you, I had a conversation with Art Bell on the flip side. He says, you guys play poker all the time, but you never remember it. And Whitley looked at me and said, what's really unusual is I hear what you're saying, and no, I never played poker with Art Bell during my life. However, you're saying it now, I think that is actually happening.
Yeah.
So it was like my saying it made him realize that it was possible that it was happening. He's just not aware of it. So so what I've done is I've learned, after filming 200 hypnotherapy sessions, where I'm not asking questions, I'm just filming. I got the camera on, and I might slip the hypnotherapist a note, ask about this. But after doing that for years, the past 10, 20 years, actually, then, like I say, I've interviewed quite a few mediums, different parts of the country, really talented people who are like cell phones to the other side. Then I'd say about 6 or 7 years ago, I started doing these guided meditations because I realized somebody who had an experience, and by an experience, I mean either like an experience bypassing the filters on the brain. The filters, apparently, and according to Dr. Grayson's book, After, he talks about them, page 125, filters on the brain that block awareness or block information that's not conducive to survival. Like the human brain just blocks that stuff out. Dogs can smell, animals and insects, they can see all kinds of dimensions that we can't. But we block all that stuff out because it's not useful to living, let's say. But some people are born without those filters. Some children up until the age of 8, they see people that other people cannot. We've all heard those stories. Some kids saying, Grandpa's here. Or they remember past lives. And conversely, elderly lose the filters just before passing. Dr. Grayson talks about terminal lucidity. It's this phenomenon where people with dementia spontaneously recover their memory. 70% of the hospice care workers in the UK have reported that, where their patients suddenly remember everything. As Dr. Grayson noted, brains had atrophied. They shouldn't remember. They get shrunk and they shouldn't remember anything. But it's as if the filters have died along with the dying brain. So that's the rubric or the architecture of what I'm talking about. People report that we exist before we come to the planet, that we're fully aware of all our lifetimes, that we plan or argue or volunteer or cajoled into coming back. Guilt trip, I don't know, it depends on the person. But once we get here, we try to do the things that we promised we were going to do. And people screw up because it's hard to navigate this planet, negative and positive things that are on it. But at the same time, we're with our friends, or with our classmates, or with people that we've known forever. And I like to point out that in my research for the past 20 years, and especially in these guided meditations, I can show people very simply that their loved ones they're not far away. I mean, the ones who want to talk to them, let's put it that way. We all have loved ones. It's like, please don't come and visit me, because I still owe you the $20. I'm not giving it to you. But by and large, we have people that we've lost that we wish we could continue to converse with. In my weird case, because Luana Anders, my friend who passed away, she moderates the podcast that I do called Hacking the Afterlife. So Jennifer Schaefer and I, and Jennifer, like I say, works for the FBI, LAPD, other people. And she and I do this podcast where Luana has the guest list. Luana is the person with the clipboard. And so if she allows the person who wants to talk to us to come forward, she's the one who decides, like, well, this guy's ready to talk to you. And we'll say, Luana, who's here? And then she'll either say, it could be somebody I know, could be somebody Jennifer knows, could be somebody who just passed away. We had Brian Wilson show up, the Beach Boy guy.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I had, when I wrote for Variety some years ago, I was a music critic, and I did write a review of his show. And I have sometimes these experiences in my own place where I hear like a phrase or a concept or a feeling. And I wasn't thinking about it. I kid you not. I was standing in the kitchen and I heard Brian Wilson's voice say, "I'd be honored to be on your show." And I was so emotionally taken back by that, like the way he put it. So then I went to and this is the way I work with Jennifer. I don't tell her what happened. I just go, well, who's on Luana's list? And she said, Brian Wilson is here. Well, I think she said the Beach Boy guy is here. And then she said Brian Wilson. And then we interviewed him. What happened? What it was like when you crossed over. People like Brian, of course, and people with dementia. He didn't have dementia, but, he had like ADHD. And, it's like a part of them is already off stage while they're here. And so it's not really hard for them to sort of step into the other side to say, well, let's continue the conversation. Anyway, that's been my experience. And so I don't know about you, Carl. We talked a little before the show, but if you want to, listen, I've been talking nonstop. I want to let you tell me what you want to talk about. But if you want to do a guided meditation during your show, for your audience's sake, so they can hear what I'm talking about, I'm happy to do that for you.
Oh, yeah. But I wanted to bring up first, and I don't think this has ever been spoken about in public, but Art's last son, Alex, he's still a young man now. But when he was growing, still in a toddler stage, he would point at a particular area of the room and he would say, "Daddy." So Art was apparently appearing to Alex after his passing.
How old was Alex at the time?
Oh, 4-ish, 5-ish. I think he's 7 now. They visited us here over Christmas.
Please.
He hasn't been doing that lately, and I'm not sure I even want me to even say anything about that publicly.
Well, you can just no. Listen, I want to point something out. Look, I've been doing this a long time. Our 3-year-old daughter, she was 3. She came in, I remembered it like it was yesterday. My wife and I and our newer born son were sitting on the couch. And our little daughter came running in, out of breath, excited, and she said, "Grandpa's in the kitchen." Now, my father had passed away in 2004. This was 2008. And I startled, I just started doing this research, and I tried not to react. I like to jump up and run in the kitchen because I wouldn't see him. But I said, what does he want to say? And she paused and she listened and she said, "He wants to say, I love you very much." And I said, "So let me ask, why I want to continue the conversation. Why is he here?" And she said, "He came to see the baby," which her little brother was on the couch with his mom. And I said, "Does he have anything else he wants to say?" And then she looked around. My dad was an architect. She looked around at all the toys and all the boxes and all the fences and all the things you put up. And she said, "He says you guys need a bigger place." Now, what's unusual about that, and to be clear, the night he passed away in 2004, I flew back to Chicago, to Northbrook, where I grew up, the house that he had designed. And I was in my bedroom, and I heard him walking down the hallway. I heard him enter the room because the floor was creaky. And I felt his hand on my shoulder. So I was awake. And I said, "Dad?" And I heard his voice, clear as a bell, just a few inches behind my ear, say, "I'm experiencing indescribable joy." Now, that's not a phrase I've ever heard anyone say, including him. And he had Alzheimer's, so the last 3 or 4 years of his life, he didn't say anything. So it was startling to hear his voice, but also to hear those words, indescribable joy. And then he said, "I need you to get a pencil and a piece of paper to write something down." And I thought, what? If I turn on a light to find a paper, this will all vanish. I said, "Just tell it to me. I'll remember." And he said, "Get the paper and pen." Dad. Okay. So I turned on the light, got the pencil and paper, turned off the light. He was still there. He said, "Tell your mother I love her very much. Tell her I'm here with Harry and Kitty." And he named 4 other individuals, names I'd never heard of. And I wrote them down. So he's here with these people. And tell your brother this. I have 3 brothers. And so each one, very specific. Tell him to do this. Tell him to worry about this financial thing. Tell this one to do that. And at the end of the conversation, knowing how they would not believe a word I'm saying, I said, "Why are you telling me?" And he said, "Because you can hear me." Which means my filters are off. It's not my fault. It's not a gift. It's just they're off. They're squirrely. I could hear him. And so the next morning, I said to my mom, "Mom, I think Dad came to visit me last night." "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah, he told me to tell you he's with these people." And she said, "Oh, those are our friends who died in World War II." None of the people I'd ever met, none of the names I knew. She did. So that's an example of new information. It can't be cryptomnesia coming from me. It could only come from him to her. And so I heard my father's voice. And the second time I heard it was I was in a lake in Tibet, actually, middle of the night. Somebody told me, this is tradition, you go out and swim in that lake, ice cold. And so I went out there. I thought, what the heck? So I was out there in Lake Mansarovar and paddling around, and I heard him say, "Basta," which is Italian for enough already. Like, get out of there. And I was like, like it could have echoed across the lake as far as I know. But anyway, the point is, it's not special. It is what mediums are doing. What's special is that we block it and we pretend like we can't hear it. And so when you say that a friend of yours son saw his father or pointed out his father, and just like I said, the filters on the brain don't really kick in till the 8th year. Now, I don't know why that is. I asked one pediatrician, he said, the skull hardens about that age. So it might be a receptivity issue. I don't know. But around age 8, they do start to not hear it anymore. James Leininger's the famous case that Carol Bowman and Dr. Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia studied, where he remembered being a World War II pilot, and his father tracked down his crew members on the ship. So they were in their 80s, talking to his son, who remembered all of them and who they were, what their names were, and where they were from. And it was this uncanny get together. ABC has covered it, and quite a few other people. And I just want to say, look, people who, when they hear the word reincarnation, they think that's a religious term. We have to focus on, what does incarnation mean? How do we come into to being? And in those cases, there are 1,500 historically accurate reincarnation case studies in Dr. Jim Tucker's book before. Carol Bowman's book, Children's Past Lives, she was with her child one day, and he went into a Civil War cemetery and pointed to his tomb. And Mom, that's who I was. And that allowed her, because she knew he wasn't making it up. Yeah, I mean, could have been, but she knew that wasn't that the way he presented it. She started doing the research and found out that this person, et cetera, et cetera. And so she also was a student of Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia in the medical school. So those are two scientists that anybody can point to their work. It's not somebody, just talking about this funny thing that happened. But in my case, your pal Rich, I tell people, if you have a toddler under 8, but more like, 3 or 4 years old, ask them this question. It's non-denominational. There's no religion attached to it. Did you choose mommy and daddy, or did we choose you? It's a simple question, and you'll be shocked at how many unusual answers you get. I mean, I would say 50% of the people who do that and then report back to me, they say, I have no idea why he said, I was your father last time and now you're my father. Or, other very specific details that are mind-bending. And if you haven't heard of it, it's about skydiving. Like I say, if you haven't heard of it, if you haven't experienced, you're going to say, no, people don't jump out of planes. That just doesn't happen, unless you have. And then if you have, then it's happened, where you've heard somebody say, in the movie, there's a movie I made called Hacking the Afterlife. And at the very last frame, there's this friend of a friend of mine who filmed her daughter, saying goodnight. And the daughter looked above her head and she said, oh, Grandma's here. And she says goodnight, and then used the nickname that only her grandmother, this girl's mom, ever used. And she was startled, but it's on camera. So the point is, it's not a religious concept that I'm talking about. I just want to set that aside. I'm not talking about, sure, there are religions that talk about reincarnation. There are Native American tribes that talk about it. The Cathars were Catholics who talked about it, but the church didn't like that, so they put all the Cathars to death, and so that they could go to their next lifetime. Quite a few people have talked about it. Thomas Edison was a fervent believer in it. So was Arthur Conan Doyle. So was John Lennon. I mean, the point isn't who believes in it. I focus on the data. What's the data say? And I've been filming people, like I say, for 20 years, accessing this information. It's not just who were you. And now this is where it gets interesting, Carl, because it's not that people are like playing cards. They aren't like a king and then they show up as a joker, or they were a queen and then they show up as somebody else. It's a portion of our conscious energy comes to the stage, as I like to call it. So if you think of it this way, and the average is reportedly between 20 and 40%. Sometimes people say more, some people say less, but you can say to a person during a hypnosis session, this lifetime that you're remembering when you were a Native American, how much of your conscious energy did you bring to that lifetime? And they'll say, 32%, 35%, whatever the number is. What's unusual about that is that while we're on stage here in this construct, the majority of who we are is off stage at all times. That's why when some people have a near-death experience and they see loved ones who are still alive, they're disconcerted because they're like, oh, I saw Uncle Pete, but Uncle Pete's alive. And when I've examined that in greater detail, usually what they see is Uncle Pete, but a little more translucent version. It's like you could see through him. And because this happened to a guy named David Bennett. David Bennett was a science officer aboard a ship, and he fell overboard, and he drowned. And he was underwater for 12 minutes, was what they estimate. And then the boat pushed him up against a rock and expelled the water out of his lungs, and he came back. But his life was completely altered. He had a near-death experience where he saw a life review, which everybody apparently has in this research, which is every negative thing that you've ever done is shown to you by your teachers, your council members, and your classmates who are all there witnessing. And in many cases, traumatic events, you're their first person. You're experiencing the trauma. I'll give you one example. Dr. Kenneth Ring talked about a client of his who, during his near-death event, remembered that he beat a guy up in a road rage accident, jumped out of his car, started pounding on the guy, broke his teeth, except he saw it from the point of view of the victim. He saw it from hovering above, looking down, but also he was the guy. He could taste the blood and feel the broken teeth and feel the humiliation. This happened to David Bennett. He remembered a thing that happened in Texas. He was in a bar in Texas. Who doesn't stop at a bar in Texas? And a guy hit on him at the bar, and he said to the bartender, is this that kind of bar? And they beat the heck out of the guy. Mm-hmm. And his memory of that event was him being the guy and experiencing all that trauma. But conversely, he also had this other weird happy experience where they showed him something he had done out of the kindness of his heart. The way he put it was, there was a woman that he knew, an older lady who was always complaining. And he just took it upon himself, I'm going to make this woman happy. I'm going to make her joyous. And he really went out of his way until one day she finally smiled and said, I want to thank you for really helping me. And they showed him how that event changed her life, which also changed her children's lives, almost like a pebble in the water, and how it affected all these people. So now what's unusual is that David recovered. And when he went home to his wife, he told her about this and she slapped him. She was like, are you out of your mind? You what? Anyway, they eventually got divorced. And then some years later, he did a hypnotherapy session with a Newton-trained hypnotherapist. They have a website, and you can find a therapist anywhere near you. And he did this session, and he recalled all those events. But he also recalled something really unusual, which was he saw that in the future, he was going to get cancer, but he was going to survive it. So when 20 years after that happened, when he was working in a hospital in upstate New York, and he went in to get some test results, and this doctor came in because his oncologist was out of town. So this doctor comes in, but he recognizes him from the near-death experience. And he says, this doctor comes in to say, I really got some bad news for you. You've only got a few months to live. And David Bennett said, no, I survived this. And the guy said, you're in denial. But, he did survive it. I'm sorry to say David passed away about a year ago. His book is called Voyage of Purpose. But he lived another 20 years beyond that event. And he told me that story himself. And it's in the movie Hacking the Afterlife. If you ever get a chance to watch that, it's free on Gaia if you do a test run. But it's also on Amazon Prime, where I interview all these doctors and I show what it's like to do hypnotherapy and what it's like to do guided meditation, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to point out, and this stems from your mentioning a friend of yours, son, said, "Oh, I see Daddy up there."
Yeah,
and
that was actually Art's son.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. Okay. I'm not repeating it for that reason.
Okay.
But I am telling you, I have heard that story in variations for the past 20 years all the time, and I don't find it unusual. What I find unusual is when people deny it. I think what would motivate a child to make that up? I really don't understand how people run around saying that stuff. Oh, the kid saw it on TV. Oh, well, all right, I've got one for you. This shows you how I could say one thing and then 2 seconds later say the completely opposite, which is my son and I. My son was about 2 years old, and whenever I was traveling, I would, call on the phone to say, I love you, good night. And so one night, my wife and I were talking on the phone. I'm in Chicago visiting my parents, and he gets on the phone and he says, full sentence, first full sentence in his life, says, Dad, I was a monk in Nepal. I went, what? Put your mother on the phone. Like, what? Were you guys watching some TV show? Like, what was that about? She was like, no, we weren't. I don't know why he said that. And then, I kid you not, the next 5 or 6 years, he proved it to me. I'll give you just a couple examples. When I was working on the movie Salt with Angelina Jolie, I was on the set working for Philip Noyce. I get a call from my wife, subletting an apartment in New York City. And she says, where did this book? There's a book here. And he pulled out a book from the library of the guy who lives here, and he threw one in the trash, but he handed me the other book. And he said, this is the important one. And the book is called Circling the Sacred Mountain. And let me tell you why that's important. Because when he was 3 years old, going back a few years, we were driving around Santa Monica, and I'm looking at him in the child seat in the back, through the mirror. And I just casually said, like the non-denominational question, like, did you know me from before? He said, yeah. I said, where'd you meet me? He said, Tibet. I said, Tibet? Where in Tibet? He said, on the path. I thought, is that a philosophical comment? Does he mean the journey? And then I remembered, oh my gosh, when I was in Tibet with Robert Thurman, Uma's dad, I was filming a documentary for Tibet House, circling the sacred mountain. And so I'm on this mountain, Mount Kailash, and Robert says, if you make a wish on this spot, it comes true. And I swear to you, I was like, I'm going to ask for $1 million. No, I want a 3-picture movie deal. That was the two choices. I couldn't make up my mind. I said, whatever comes out of my mouth, that's what I want. And out of my mouth came the words, I want a son. And I thought, what's that about? We had a daughter, and I thought, is it the altitude? Or maybe there's some kind of genetic male thing. I didn't know. It came out of my mouth. But now I'm back in the car with my son, and I go, wait a minute, do you mean on Mount Kailash? And he goes, no. Oh, not Mount. Okay. Wait a second. And I'm trying to remember, where I made the wish. I said, was it on Kangra? He said, yeah, Kangra, which is the name of the path that goes around Mount Kailash, but in Tibetan. So now we're back, and I'm on the phone on the set and going, what happened? What's going on? Why are you freaking out? And she said, well, he pulled these 2 books out of this guy's library we're subletting. He threw one in the trash. He said, that book's worthless. This is the important one. Robert Thurman's book, Circling the Sacred Mountain. He opened up the book, pointed to a photograph where I made the wish and said, that's where I found Daddy.
That's wild.
He couldn't read. And I'd never said the word Kailash other than that time in the car. So he clearly was remembering that event. And a couple of more. One was my wife and I were in a Tibet shop in LA. He was about 5, and he kind of vanished or disappeared. And my wife was like, where is he? And I was like, it's a small shop. Got to be somewhere. She went into the back room, and he was in front of a mirror doing full prostrations. If you know what that means, you put your hands above your head, you put them to your lips, you put them to your heart, you go all the way down to the ground, you put your head, your forehead to the ground, and then you get up again, and you do it again and again and again. He had never seen that. I had never shown him any monks doing that. I've seen it because I've been to Tibet and India, and I've seen people doing that, but he hadn't. And he sees his mom, catches his mom looking at him in the mirror after 3 minutes of her just standing there with her mouth open. And he goes, oh, Mom, you need to meditate more, and this is how you do it. And he pulled her down to the ground and he said, you hear those bells, those Tibetan bells? Whenever there's a bell, not an angel gets its wings. He said, whenever there's a bell, it means peace comes into the world. And so she's telling me this, and I'm like, what? And so I go to a Tibetan friend, and I go, listen, I just want to ask you a goofy question. What does it mean when you hear a bell in Tibetan music? And he went, oh, it means peace comes into the world. I didn't know that. Anyway, the last one this had to be about 2011. So he was about 6. And I sat my kids down. I said, look, grandma's dying. And by the time we get to Chicago, she'll be gone. So the next time you see her, they're going to have her like, in a box and makeup on. And because I remembered my experience, I was trying to like prep them for what that's like. And he started laughing. And my wife and I are looking at him, and he goes like, he picks up a bottle of water. It was like half empty. Picks up this bottle of water, and the cap was on. And he goes, Dad, spirit is like water. Watch. And he throws it on the ground, and then he starts hopping on it, jumping on it, up and down, like smashing it. And my wife and I are looking at each other like, what? What is he doing? And then he stopped, and he picked up the crushed, smashed bottle and held it up to us and said, you see, the water's okay. Easily the most profound teaching I've ever heard about spirit, meaning your consciousness is going to be okay no matter what happens to your body.
It's just 6. A container. Yeah, that's deep.
Yeah. So anyway, that's why I say when you've mentioned that, I don't think you have to have any fear about saying Art Bell's son saw him, because not only have I talked to him, but there's 2 hours. And by the way, that transcript of that conversation is a book I wrote called Architecture of the Afterlife. And you can read every word that happened, because I transcribed them verbatim, what Art Bell had to say, and his whole journey. He's okay. Everybody goes home. They're home. On stage, it's tough. We get old, we get gray, we get sick, we pass. We go home. We go off stage. Off stage, we don't have to worry about any of that. That's just it's a non-issue. But we come here to love, hold hands, make pizza, cappuccinos, do tactile things, enjoy sunsets, drive around with the wind in your hair. Those are things that are very hard to create on the flip side. I've heard this more times than not, which is you can pretty much create anything over there. Guitars. I meet musicians who talk about learning to play the ukulele. They're like, it's only 4 strings and a few chords. How hard can that be? Because you're doing the math. You're thinking like, well, how do I hold the ukulele? What do I do to strum it? There's people that are symphony people, musicians, conductors, etc., etc. Anyway, and so I've had this weird experience for the past 20 years. So on one hand, I've got Jennifer Schaefer, who is like a cell phone to the other side. So I can literally ask questions. And she says whatever pops into her mind. Or I can do hypnotherapy with somebody. Again, I'm not asking the questions, but you get a hypnotherapist who does, and that's 4 to 6 hours long. You can learn a lot. Or you book a guided meditation with me, richardmartini.com. And I've been doing this with people all over the world, where in about 2 hours, roughly, we do a thing over Zoom. There's a book called Divine Counsels in the Afterlife, where as an experiment, I got some scientists from Harvard, University of Montreal. I got a bishop. I got an Episcopal bishop. What kind of bishop are you? Hey, you'll do. I have an Episcopal bishop. I have a psychiatrist, and I have other professionals who all agreed to do an experiment. None of them had met me. Nobody knew of my work. A friend of mine knew them. She knew that they had all done guided meditations. And so that was the question. Would you do an hour-long Zoom call with me? And each one of them talked to, learned new information from people off stage they didn't know they could. And I just want to say something about the paranormal, a term that we use and people like to use. In that experiment, the norm was 100%. Everyone experienced talking to people off stage, so that's normal. It would be paranormal or abnormal to suggest that anyone could not. And so that's my gift to. And so, look, I know people want to hear like, oh yeah, you make it sound so easy. Like, come on, give me a 1, 2, 3. So I was going on your buddy Coast to Coast, George Noory's show, and I just prior to the show, I was there talking to Jennifer Schaefer and having lunch with her, and she said, "Hey, your friend Morton is here." And I said, "Morton? Who's Morton?" She went, the guy who wrote the book about FlipSide. I said, "Oh, Michael Newton." Yeah, she says, she like, if you're going to make it up, like, why not have the name right? So she's like, "Yeah, he's here." I said, "Oh, that's interesting. What's he want to say?" "Well, he says he appreciates what you're doing, shortening things." I said, "Oh, that's great." I said, "Michael, listen, I'm going on this radio show, and can you give me a 1, 2, 3?" He said, "1, say their name." I said, do you say it aloud or in your head?" He said, "It doesn't matter." That's what she said. He said, "Richard, it doesn't matter." Number 2, you ask them questions. Now, I recommend you don't ask questions you already know the answers to, or about you. Like, why did you leave? Don't ask questions about you. Ask questions about them. Who greeted you? Who are you hanging out with? What are you doing? Who are you surprised to meet? Questions about them. But he just said, ask them questions. And then I said, well, how do you know the difference between making it up, pretending, or actual answers? And he said, when they answer the question before you can ask it, you'll know you've made a connection. That's it. And I just want to tell your audience this, that yesterday I was doing a guided meditation with somebody who'd never done a guided meditation before. And it was a little difficult for her because it was hard for her to picture what I was suggesting. Picture yourself in a boat in a river. That's how I begin my guided meditations. But at some point I was asking her council members questions, and she said, "I don't know why this is happening, but before you ask the question, I hear the answer. Everything you're saying, as you start to say it, I hear the answer, and then you finish the question." And I had to say to her, "Listen, I know why that is. It's because they're outside of time. They can anticipate what I'm going to ask. They're outside of time as we know it. Let's put it that way." Anyway, and so I'm just verifying what Michael Newton said. Michael Newton said this to Jennifer Shaver in a restaurant in Manhattan Beach. And yesterday, talking to a woman online, and she's saying, "This is so weird that I'm hearing the answers to your questions." And this happened maybe a dozen times. And so that's how you do it. You want to talk to Aunt Betty, Uncle Pete? I recommend grab a photograph, because that doesn't hurt, right? Yeah, here we go. Here's a picture. I mean, I'm holding up a picture of myself as a kid, clutching on my mother's leg with all my cousins in Ohio. And, you look at the photograph and you think to yourself, well, where was I? What was happening? What was my emotion? Was it a hot day? Was it a cold day? What was it sound like? Crickets, cicadas, probably. You remember the sounds. And so you're putting yourself in that place. And then once you're in that place, now you start to ask questions. You can ask the most basic question, which is, like, let's say you ask your mom to come and sit across from you. The most basic question to ask is, can I ask you a question? And then if you don't get any response, you say, look, we're playing a game. In order to play this game, you got to respond. You got to give me a thumbs up. You got to give me a nod. You got to give me a wink. You got to give me a okay, something so that we can play the game. They usually get that. And so you'll see them like nod slightly. And what's happening is that you're showing them that you can respond to what they're showing you. Like in a dream. Listen, everybody has dreams. I don't care what, people claim they don't have dreams. They have dreams. People who talk to us in dreams don't ever move their lips. You ever think about that?
I haven't, but you're right.
That it's telepathic communication. And once we as human beings start to realize that we can orchestrate telepathic communication, not just accept it. Look, people all the time say, oh, I saw my beloved who had died, and then I suddenly went, hey, you're dead. And then they vanish. And that's because you're telling them, I'm not ready to have this conversation. I've had people tell me, oh, I saw my father, and then I was doing everything in my power not to say that thing like you're not here or cry. And I just was in the moment, you know. And then at some point, the father then looked at him and said, you're not ready for this, are you? They know that you're struggling because, you know, the filters are off. Once you're off stage, we're back home, you know, where we work out the play. Off stage. You know, backstage, where you work out, like, what am I going to do? What are you going to play? Carl, what are you going to do? Are you going to, you know, and your dad, like, what's your dad going to do? And, you know, like, is this the right time and place? And also, they have this unusual insight into, not only am I doing this for me and my wife, but for my children, so that they can have these adventures that happen down the road. And it's just because we're on stage and we have these, it's like we're dumbed down while we're on stage. We're good actors. I mean, a good actor doesn't think about all the plays they've been in. They don't walk around the stage going, how did I say that, you know, in Henry V? Oh, maybe I should talk more like Hamlet. No, they're involved and invested in the moment, day by day, whatever it is we're tasked and we're supposed to do. We just focus. That's the best acting. People then say to me, well, what about all the frickin' conflicts that we have and all the trauma? Why would I ever agree to that? And I always ask them, like, so what kind of movies do you like to see? You know, too many people like horror movies, but, you know, what do you like to see? Do you like to see action pictures? Do you like to see romance? Do you like to see one-on-one buddy comedies? The essence of drama, as Aristotle put it so succinctly, is conflict. You can't have drama without conflict. So when you're planning the play and somebody comes to you and says, you know, I'm just gonna float. I'm just gonna be the guy who gets ice cream, and I show up and I smile, I get ice cream, and maybe I win the lottery, and then everything's gonna be okay. And I'm gonna, and people go, well, what do we need you for? Why don't you sit this one out? You can sit in the stands. You can watch us as we wrestle around on the field. Because we got stuff we want to learn. Because we want to graduate. We want to learn those things that are hard to learn. Anyway, I let you get one question in. Go ahead, Carl.
Well, we're at the top of the hour. How about I take my break and then we'll come back and continue onward.
Perfect timing.
This is Dark Matter News. I'm Joshua Stark. 3 people have died after a suspected hantavirus outbreak on a cruise ship traveling across the Atlantic, raising fresh concerns about disease risks in confined travel settings. The cases emerged aboard the expedition vessel MV Hondius during a voyage from Argentina toward Cape Verde. Health officials say one infection has been confirmed, while several additional cases remain under investigation. Hantavirus is a rare but potentially deadly disease, usually spread through contact with rodent droppings, urine, or saliva. It can cause severe respiratory illness, and while human-to-human transmission is extremely uncommon, investigators are still working to determine exactly how the virus may have spread aboard. At least one passenger was evacuated in critical condition, and authorities are closely monitoring others who may have been exposed. International health teams are now involved in assessing the situation and guiding containment efforts. While cruise ships have long been associated with outbreaks of illnesses like norovirus, experts say an outbreak involving hantavirus is highly unusual. The focus now is identifying the source of the infection and preventing further spread. The incident underscores the unpredictable nature of infectious diseases, even in controlled travel environments, as the investigation continues. Here in the States, the CDC is monitoring 41 people across 16 states for possible hantavirus exposure. This is Dark Matter News.
The Bible describes men's thoughts in the last days as deeply corrupted, selfish, and rebellious against God, marked by perilous times. In reverse speech, the fulfillment of prophecy, David John Oates goes beyond psychology and linguistics to ask a deeper question. Did Scripture anticipate a time when hidden words would be revealed? Drawing from the Bible, the Gospels, Revelation, and ancient spiritual traditions, this book examines recurring themes long overlooked. The voice of the heart, words that testify against us, secrets proclaimed from the housetops, sealed books opened at the appointed time, and the two-edged sword that proceeds from the mouth. David Oates argues that these are not merely poetic metaphors, but descriptions of a revelatory process now made visible through modern technology. Reverse speech, fulfillment of prophecy, now available at Amazon.com. Get your copy today.
Hollywood icon Dan Aykroyd is adding a new title to his resume, novelist. The Ghostbusters star has announced his debut fiction book, Soul Hider, a science fiction adventure blending aliens, human souls, and Aykroyd's lifelong fascination with the paranormal. The story follows an ordinary insurance adjuster who's recruited by extraterrestrials to secretly hide harvested human souls around Earth. But what begins as a strange assignment quickly spirals into an intergalactic conflict that could decide the future of humanity. Publishers described the novel as fast-paced, darkly funny, and packed with the supernatural themes Aykroyd has explored throughout his career. The book is scheduled for release this October from HarperCollins. Catch up with us at darkmatternews.com. A retired Navy admiral is making headlines after claiming some UAPs may be controlled by what he described as non-human intelligence. Former Rear Admiral Timothy Gallaudet made the comments on a recent Fox News interview focused on military encounters with unexplained objects. Gallaudet, who recently led the Navy's Meteorology and Oceanography Command and also served as acting administrator of NOAA, says that he believes some sightings recorded by military personnel cannot be explained by current human technology. He pointed to reports of objects moving seamlessly through air and water at extreme speeds without visible propulsion systems or conventional flight characteristics. The former admiral stopped short of definitively claiming extraterrestrials are behind the sightings, but argued the evidence suggests something beyond known human capabilities may be involved. His comments arrive amid growing public interest in UAP investigations following congressional hearings, whistleblower testimony, and the release of declassified military footage over the past several years. Federal officials continue to stress that there is no confirmed evidence linking UAP sightings to alien life. However, the Pentagon has acknowledged that many incidents remained unexplained after formal review and investigation. Gallaudet says continued transparency, scientific research, and open discussion are critical. Catch up with Dark Matter News on Facebook and darkmatternews.com. From Memphis, Tennessee, I'm Joshua Stark.
Falling in love was the last thing I had on my mind. Holding you is a warmth that I thought I could never find. Just trying to decide
From the Ozark foothills of northeast Arkansas, here is Carl Richardson on Midnight Frequency Radio.
We're back with our guest, Richard Martini. I passed on your message to the listener that requested it, so they should be able to respond to you.
Okay, very good. The question was, how to get in touch with me? And I was saying richardmartini.com, just the way it sounds. Often stirred, rarely shaken. Just kidding. But there's a little form on there, and I get all those emails. And I just want to mention, I've got 13 books out there. So FlipSide was the first book, and then I did follow-up books. It's a Wonderful Afterlife, and a couple of those, and then Hacking the Afterlife. And then that's when I met Jennifer Schaefer, and together with her work, this idea of just, having conversations with people I know or met or worked with, that was mind-bending. We've got 4 of those books, Backstage Pass to the FlipSide, 1, 2, and 3, Tuning into the Afterlife, which is just musicians that I've talked to. My mom was a concert pianist, and so we had a lot of conversations about that. Then after that comes Architecture of the Afterlife. My dad was an architect, so I was looking at things from his point of view. And then, like I said, Divine Counsels in the Afterlife. Then probably the most controversial of my books, people were saying that Jesus was showing up in their guided meditations or hypnotherapy. And I've done the research. 15% of near-death experiences, whether people believe in him or not, atheist, agnostic, doesn't matter, he shows up. And so at first I thought, well, this is controversial. Do I really want to go down this path? But I thought I'd be dishonest or less than honest if I didn't just ask him or the same questions that I was asking other people. And so what I did was I had a number of interviews with people who were seeing him, and the former head of Paramount Studios reached out to me, David Kirkpatrick, and he said, you should write a book about those interviews. And he wrote the foreword to it. It's called The Greatest Story Never Told is Told by Jesus and Those Who Knew Him. And what comes out of that book is a very unusual story about a guy who still exists, let's put it that way, who shows up when people think about him. He says he shows up when you have an open heart. And I've filmed quite a number of people talking to him about his journey, about his life, his loves, everything, and what he thinks about now. Plus, he's got this really funny sense of humor. I don't know how else to put it, but he does show up, and sometimes I'll say to people, would you ask him to change into something more conducive to conversation? Because when they see him in a robe and stuff, that freaks him out. And he almost always changes into the same thing, jeans and a t-shirt, as if that's the only thing he's got in his closet. Anyway, in one particular event was a woman who said she saw him wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and then she started to laugh. I said, what's so funny? She said, the t-shirt says The Grateful Dead on it. And I thought, okay. So listen, that's another topic, and it's very unusual. That's probably the most controversial. Then comes a controversial book, which is more about what we're talking about. It's called Close Encounters of the Flipside Kind. And that is talking about aliens. When I was in grade school, my science professor was J. Allen Hynek, the guy who wrote Project Blue Book, who coined the phrase Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I didn't realize who he was until I saw the movie, and I recognized my professor in the movie because there's a cameo. And I've subsequently become friends with his son, Paul, who is also a scientist, and very unusual conversations in that book with scientists who are no longer on the planet, like John Mack, like J. Allen Hynek, and then also with his son, Paul Hynek. We did a guided meditation where we accessed his father, and his father said the same things to me through his son that he said during our conversation with him through a medium. In particular, I asked Paul Hynek to ask his father if he remembered me from, grade school when he was a science professor. And he said, yeah, you were very persnickety. I asked a lot of questions. And so now cut to about a week later, I'm with Jennifer Schaefer, and we go live on the air. We don't plan anything. We just turn the Zoom on, and that's our show. And I said, can we talk to this guy's father? And he came forward and I said, do you remember me? And she, word for word, said, he says you were persnickety. Now, that's not a term I've ever used or heard other than from some archaic, 1950s guy. Anyway, that being said, that's a very unusual book. There also are some very unusual conversations with people who recall encounters with aliens. And because of the kind of work I do, I can ask people to go back to that moment when the event occurred and freeze frame it, then turn it into a hologram so that we can move about the vision that they had, whatever it was, whether it's seeing a UFO, whether it's seeing a person be abducted, doesn't matter. We can go back without any stress because we're in a hologram. We can move around the hologram and then address people in the hologram and ask them who they are. Very simple question to ask somebody who's not from the planet is, are you a tourist? Have you come here for work, or are you just flying by? And the answer to that is very unusual, and it's often the same thing, that they report knowing the person that they're coming to visit prior to their incarnation. As weird as that sounds, that's what they report. And then, after that, there's one other book, which your listeners might be appreciative of, and it's called She Was Never Lost, the Amelia Earhart saga. And it's kind of a culmination of 40 years of research, because way before I started this research, a friend of mine, I had just finished my second feature film, Live It Up, which had Dean Stockwell and Nancy Allen starring in it, about the Chicago Board of Trade. And my old friend from high school wrote me a letter and said, you should make a movie about Amelia Earhart. No one has. I wrote a script and Diane Keaton optioned it, but then she made it with somebody else. And then ultimately I ended up working on the Hilary Swank picture. And I've been working on Amelia's story off and on for 30 some years. Within that time frame, I had mediums reach out to me, people I didn't know. I met at a party, let's say, and then they said, I want to tell you that there's a pilot who wants to talk to you. I had 3 different mediums tell me that Amelia Earhart wanted to talk to me. And of course, I'm thinking to myself, how could they possibly know that I've been working on this story? But whatever, instead of judging it, I'd say, okay, let me ask you some questions. And ultimately, Jennifer Schaefer and I've had multiple conversations with her. And the question that people ask was, what happened to her? Well, I can tell you in a nutshell, based on research for all these decades, she landed the plane in Mili Atoll in the Marshall Islands. She was picked up by the Japanese, arrested, taken to Saipan, where she was incarcerated. Her navigator, Fred Noonan, was executed for being a spy. She was incarcerated for 7 years. I have eyewitnesses to all of these events, people that I've interviewed on Saipan, and then I interviewed U.S. Marines who found her plane on Eslido Airfield on June 18, 1944, who decoded the message saying on June 19th they had found her plane at the airfield. They later test flew the plane 2 weeks later, and then 2 weeks after that to 3 weeks after that, they witnessed the U.S. forces destroy her plane, bury it. Her body was supposedly dug up, and this was a matter of public record that Fred Gerner wrote about in 1966, that her body was dug up by 2 GIs named Hansen and Burke. But people don't realize that Hansen and Burke admitted in 1977 that they only found an arm and a partial rib cage. Now, this goes back to what we're talking about, because I was in the meeting with Jennifer Schaefer, our first conversation, where she said, I asked her, do you want to help me with a missing person case? And she was like, absolutely. I didn't tell her who. So I went to her office, and for 3 hours, I talked to somebody who knew as much about Amelia as I did. And I've interviewed everybody, read every book that there is. And at the end of our conversation, I asked Amelia, I had heard on Saipan that you were either shot or beheaded. Now, that turns out to be true of 2 U.S. pilots who were shot down after she was incarcerated. I didn't know that at the time. She said, no, I died of dysentery. And then she added, and by the way, when those 2 GIs dug me up, they only found an arm. That was not something I knew or had heard before. But 10 minutes after filming this interview, I'm in my car, I get a call from former NTSB investigator in Seattle who says to me, Richard, I just was in an office of an ATF officer, federal agent, who has been doing the same research that you've been doing for all these years, and everything you told me is in his work. It's all there. He said, except when they dug her up, they only found an arm. Now, I had just heard that detail from Amelia Earhart 10 minutes before, and that had my head spinning. So that's where I've been at. And since then, so if you're interested in Amelia Earhart's story, based not only on like what happened to her physically, and they're the secrets of her life, where about her love life and things that people don't know, they never talked about, things that I dug up. She was never lost because the Japanese knew where she was, the Americans knew where she was, but couldn't reveal it because that would reveal they had broken the codes, which they had in the 1930s. And she knew where she was, and she knows where she is now. More important than that.
I had seen that on a story somewhere about they only found an arm. I can't remember.
It might have been me. That's all I can say is because I haven't heard anybody else talk about it. But I mean, I found that article in the Chicago Tribune in January 1977. I didn't find it in 1970. I found it, when I was researching the book, and I did put that out. I put it on the Earhart on Saipan website. And listen, I can tell you that quite a few other investigators have subsequently either talked to me or we've talked about this, or I've put it all in the book, all of their work too, because I've been talking to these guys since, Dick Spink found pieces of her plane, and, he's a Seattle teacher who traveled in that area, and he found pieces of an Electra and he brought it back, and Jim Hayton, the NTSB, the guy who investigates plane wrecks, he owns a piece of an Electra, and so he showed me on camera exactly where it fit. Les Kinney is an investigator who's been working on it for 30 years. That's who the former ATF's agent stuff was. Mike Harris and I went to Saipan together. I've been doing the research, I just want to say, and it's all in the book. And so it's like people say to me, aren't you going to make the movie? And like, let's go to Saipan and let's dig her up. And I go, you go. It's in the book. I've got the place where she's buried. The place where the plane has been pushed into a pit. It's all there. Every last bit of it. So, and as Amelia has said many times, stop looking for me. I'm here. I'm home.
I'm going to have to get a copy of that because her history is something I've always had an interest in.
Well, I'll send you a copy. How's that?
Well, I would
send you definitely. A PDF. How's that? You can, you can just read it. Well, if you want to get a copy, please do. Of course, it'll help
I might get a copy and send it back to you so you can put your autograph in it, and then I'll.
Oh yeah, very, very good. Listen, and I appreciate that, and of course it's on Audible, and people like hearing me read my own stuff. Anyway, what can I say other than I've talked a lot. I've talked to death about it. I've talked a lot about it, and I'm at a point where I'm not arguing about it. It's not a theory. It's not my belief. It's not. I'm just reporting not only what the evidence shows, the Marines show, what they said, which is corroborated. A lot of Marines saying the exact, finding her briefcase, her passport. Being tasked to guard her plane, all this stuff. Not only that, I've also been talking to Amelia and Fred and George Putnam and all of the people involved in her life on the flip side and asking them questions to corroborate details. I'll tell you, this is uncanny. I was driving down Adams Boulevard in Los Angeles and I got this feeling that I should pull into this cemetery, White Pines. And I was like, White Pines, why does that sound familiar to me? And so I walked in the cemetery, nobody there. I walked in the mausoleum and I walked right up to George Putnam's tomb. I didn't know it was there, but somebody guided me right to it. I have a photograph of it in the book. So at some point you just have to go, I don't know if Rich is in his mind or out of his mind. It doesn't matter. I'll check it out. But so I know we've got about a little more than a half hour, maybe left. Is that right?
Oh yeah.
Carl? Okay.
Yes.
So let's, if we don't mind, I'm going to show you. Show you is not exactly the right word, but we're going to try to do a guided meditation live on the air, just to show the audience kind of, because the guy who asked you a message, right? He was like, what's a way that I can get into the altered spheres and to get to a place where I can converse with my guides and teachers? And this is one way that I've found to do it. I can adamantly say meditation is the way to put yourself in a space to hear and accept or focus on things, learn things. For those not familiar with meditation, I'm sure you've all heard the term, but med means measure in Latin. You're measuring your thoughts. So it's not a religious practice. It's literally, you could be swimming and meditating. You could be running and meditating. There was a meditation that Robert Thurman taught me because I traveled, to India and Tibet with him. It's a walking meditation where you're just focused on your one foot in front of the other. There's a breath meditation where you count your breath, one breath, second breath. At some point, you're trying to remember the next number. You can't think about the troubles that are happening in your life. So that's a way of clearing things away. This meditation that I kind of do is more of an ideation. I'm imagining something. And like I said a little bit earlier, photographs sometimes help. You want to talk to somebody, you want to be there. A photograph of a park, photograph of the most beautiful sunset. You could be there. You can just slow everything down and focus that. But here's what I do. And I'm going to ask you to do this, Carl. I'm going to ask you some questions. And please, just whatever comes to mind, try not to judge it. You can close your eyes. You can keep one eye open. You can hold your hands over your eyes. Doesn't matter. If you're driving, don't listen. But if you're not driving, tape it or tune in later. All right, so let me just shift my voice into something more calming. All right, so Carl, I want you to picture yourself in a boat on a river. Can you do that?
Yes.
And I want you to tell me, what does the boat look like?
It's a southern type fishing John boat.
Okay, how long is it?
14 feet.
And is this a boat you're familiar with?
Yes.
Do you own it?
My dad used to own it.
Okay, very good. And so when you look down in the boat, what's in there? Are there any leftover things from when guys were there before?
A cooler.
Oh, open it up. What's in there?
Well, it's my dad's boat. There's always beer in it.
Okay, what brand?
Bush.
It's so funny. Just yesterday, I was doing this guided meditation, and this woman was talking to somebody who said they were from Milwaukee and had passed away in the 50s. And I said, what's the beer that you preferred the best? And he named a beer that only people in Milwaukee would know. She didn't know what he was talking about, and he said Milwaukee's best, and that has been out of business for decades.
Yes.
But okay, so we got a nice cold Bush in the cooler. We don't have to open it up just yet, but we might. So now I want you to look at the waterway. What does the water look like?
It's greenish.
Yeah? Are we in a pond, a lake, an ocean, a river?
It's a river.
And is this a river you know?
Yes, the Mississippi.
Oh, the mighty Miss. All right, and I want you to look down at your feet. What are you wearing?
Boots.
Oh, what color?
Brown.
And what are you wearing above the boots?
Blue jeans.
And above that?
A button-down southern shirt.
Southern shirt. Color is that?
Blue.
And now take a look at your face. Is this you now, Carl, or is this younger?
Younger.
Oh, about what age?
20s.
Ah, very good. 20s. Okay. That's interesting. And do you remember being in your 20s, being in this boat?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to do something because we're skipping down. I'm just going to jump ahead. I'm going to ask somebody to sit across from you in the boat, if you don't mind. And because it's his beer and his boat, could Jack sit across from you?
That's exactly right.
All right. Now tell me what Jack's wearing.
He's wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt.
Okay. Beard? No beard?
No beard. Tennis shoes.
About how old?
He's in his 40s.
Okay. And just because it's only fair, can I ask Hazel to sit next to him?
Yeah, you can ask. She was afraid of boats.
Okay, I just want to point out this boat is tied up. Okay, even if it wasn't, I want you to tie it up.
Okay.
So we can Adobe Photoshop this at any point, which is we're on a rope, we're tied up to the dock. Nothing to fear. We can even change that green water into blue. We can change the environment any way we want. There's clouds. We can, if there's something dark or scary or thundery, just change it to a beautiful day. It's okay. Photoshop it. Okay, so let's put Hazel in the boat. How does she look?
She looks also in her
40s?
30s.
30s.
She was
Okay.
younger than Dad. So
All right, so Hazel and Jack, are you familiar with me at all, Richard? Obviously not. So Jack, I'm going to need you to give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, a smile, or a nod. Can I ask you a question? He's got a nod to play.
yes,
Does he nod?
yes.
Or do you hear him say yes?
I seen him nod.
And how about Hazel? Hazel, can I ask you to nod too?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So now I'm going to ask very simple questions, and I'm not going to disturb or distress Carl in any way. How's he doing? Jack, how is Carl doing?
He's quite often stressed.
Okay, so he needs to work on some stress. Thank you. Hazel, same question to you. How is Carl doing?
He's trying to get his life together.
Okay, something a little slightly different from her perspective, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Let me ask you this, Hazel and Jack. I know I kind of know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. Are you guys ever not connected to your son?
No.
Okay, thank you. And was that a nod on both of their parts, or
They said no.
no? They both said no. Okay, very good. So they can see what I'm doing. So do me a favor, Jack. Could you or Hazel, please? You're both welcome here, and I appreciate this. And this is a place that your son can come to at any time when he wants to have a conversation with you. So if you put it in your son's mind, Jack or Hazel, was there some point or some event, and he doesn't even have to talk about what it was, but some event that happened to him where you guys showed up to make sure he was okay, or to interfere somehow so that nothing bad happened, or maybe something funny happened?
Yes.
And can you talk about the event, or you don't want to?
This would be from Jack. He was with me when my mother passed.
Oh, so you were there. And please, if you don't mind, Jack, just show Carl where you were. Were you standing next to him? Were you behind him? Were you sitting on the bed, or above, or where were you?
Sitting on the bed, my mother's bed.
Okay. And so let me ask you this, Hazel. What was that like when you crossed over and you saw your husband standing there?
She was shocked.
I'm sorry to laugh. Shocked because you didn't expect him to be there, or you didn't believe that was going to happen?
She
Which
didn't expect to pass so soon.
Oh, I see. So that's why It's often said people are shocked to see a loved one on the other side because then that means they've left. Is that correct, Hazel?
Yes.
Okay. And Jack, let me ask you, who greeted you when you crossed over?
His mother.
And was that a happy reunion or was that stressful?
It was stressful.
And tell me why. Was it because you guys had a hard time together on the planet, or
They had a
Or you-
strained relationship.
okay, very thank you. I appreciate that. But correct me if I'm wrong, Jack, that's all gone now, correct?
Yes.
And so at what point did you realize that this was part of a play or that you had agreed to participate in a play? Right away, or did it take a while?
It took a while.
Oh, let me ask you this. Who were you surprised to see? And this could be any person throughout history. Were you surprised to see anybody on the other side? It could be a friend, it could be an enemy, it could be anyone.
His great-grandfather.
Oh. And what was that like? Was he happy to see you?
Yes.
Oh. And was he a character or what was he like, Jack?
When he was young, he was abusive.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But again, and please, Jack, to clarify, and I don't want to sound like I'm putting words in your mouth, but since you've been home, you now understand why those events occurred. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is it for a growth issue? I mean, who grows? Was it your great grandfather who grew, or was it you who grew, or who was trying to learn something there?
His great-grandfather.
And let me correct me if I'm wrong, please. In what I'm about to say, which is in essence, Jack, you agreed to help him before you even incarnated. You agreed to help him learn that difficult lesson. Is that correct?
Yes.
Because when he had his life review, he got to see his trauma that he caused other people. I appreciate that, Jack, and thank you for bringing that up because it's such an unusual. But let me ask you, so who are you hanging out with now? And just in terms of your pals, are you hanging out with relatives, friends?
A friend.
Okay. And how about back to the surprise thing? How about a happy surprise? Do you have any happy surprise person that you were shocked to see?
His father.
Ah, okay, very good. So that was a happy surprise.
Yes.
All right. Let me ask you, any musicians? Any? No?
No.
All right. No. If there was anybody that you would like to talk to, Jack, who would that be?
His grandmother.
Can we bring her forward?
Yes.
What's her name?
Florence.
Florence. Hi, Florence. Thank you. I appreciate you joining us in the boat. What's her demeanor look like? Does she look like she's happy to be here or startled?
Happy.
Happy. Well, let me ask you this, Florence. Are you as connected to Carl as you were to Jack?
Yes.
So, want to show Carl some event in his life that you were helpful about or responsible for or nudge in a way?
Yes.
Can you say what it is, or?
She taught me how to tie my shoes.
Oh, that's really sweet. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you to say, Florence. How fun. So, and ever since then, he's been tripping over them, hasn't he, Florence?
Yes.
All right, Hazel, I'm going to go back to you. I'm going to ask you some of the same questions. Who were you surprised to see on the other side, other than family members? I mean, it could be somebody in history, it could be a musician, could be an actor, could be a historical figure.
An old friend.
An old friend, male or female?
Female.
And is this somebody, well, let me ask you this, Hazel. Have you and Jack had lifetimes together before?
No.
No. How about you and this friend?
Yes.
Oh. And would you do us a huge favor and show us where that was? Was that somewhere, was that in North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia?
Europe.
And what's a date? Just put the date in your son's mind. What date was that?
1830s.
1830. Try not to judge it. And what country are we in?
France.
France. And so, Hazel, were you a boy or girl in that lifetime?
Girl.
And your friend, what's her name? Or just put the first letter in Carl's name, Carl's mind.
R.
Miss R. And was she a boy or girl in that lifetime?
Boy.
Ah. And were you guys boyfriend and girlfriend?
No.
Married? No. But connected in some way.
Yes.
Okay. And so I just want to clarify what we're talking about. Hazel is saying that the person that she was surprised to see on the other side was somebody that she'd had a lifetime with back in the 1830s in France. Let me ask you about that lifetime. Was it difficult? Was it fun? Was it an adventure? What was it?
It's difficult.
Were you living in a city or out in the country?
Country.
And so what was R's relationship to you? Were you guys working together or friends or what?
I'm not seeing anything for that.
Okay, she's saying that's the end of that question. That's fine, Hazel. I appreciate that. Listen, I appreciate that. And so I just want you to sort of, it's an odd question, but what lifetime did you have the most fun in?
My last.
This last one. Okay, very good. That's very cool, Hazel. I appreciate that. I got to ask, were your eyes hazel, or did that drive you crazy when people ask you about the color of your eyes?
Her eyes were hazel.
And did that drive you crazy when you'd have to say, just like my name?
No.
No. All right. I'm sorry. I've come from another part of the country. We'd laugh about that. And mine are as well. So Hazel, what's your impression of what we're doing, this conversation? What do you think about it?
It's interesting.
It's interesting. And I'm trying to let Carl's audience know that anybody can do this kind of conversation. You see how I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm not judging the answers, but I'm allowing the answer to inspire me for the next question. And how about you, Jack? Have you had any of the other lifetimes with your pals?
Yes.
Anyone that comes to mind? Would you please show Carl one? What year are we talking?
I'm seeing steamboats.
Oh, very good. Along the Mississippi?
Yes.
Ah, very good. And please, if you don't mind, just put yourself on that steamboat, could you?
Yes.
And what year are we talking about, roughly?
$1890s.
1890s. All right, very good. And would you do us a huge favor, Jack? Just walk over to where the buoy is and tell me, what's the name of this boat? What was it called?
Santana.
Santana. Okay. Santana. And were you giving tours on the Mississippi, or were you running goods?
Goods.
Okay, very good. And was it a happy life?
Yes.
Ah, interesting. And so let me ask you this. So when you're planning your life as Jack, right? After this lifetime on the Mississippi, who suggested that you would go back to, who pitched the idea that you would fight in Vietnam and then end up back near the Mississippi? Well, an hour drive away. Was that your idea, or was that somebody else's idea?
My idea.
And please tell us why, if you can.
Family history.
Family history. Okay, so your roots in a way. And if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about your experience in Vietnam? I'm sure, I don't know how familiar Carl is with it, but you want to show him something that happened in Vietnam that you felt was important for him to know that you never got a chance to tell him?
He was in combat.
Okay. In combat, and that must, I sound like an idiot saying that must have been stressful, but what is it about combat? Was it the camaraderie, or was it the fear, or what was it that was the primary thing you want Carl to know about?
Defense.
Defense?
Yes.
Defense. Defense of what? Yourself, your life, your country?
Country.
Country. Okay. All right, very good. And so let me ask you this, because I asked John McCain the same question, which is, there are people who passed away in wartime that we caused their death. John caused their death. And I asked him if he was able to, if he had met any of those individuals on the flip side. Have you met any of those individuals, Jack?
No.
No. And in John's case, he was trying to point out that it's part of a life planning, that people, because we're all connected. So whether we're from another country or we're from our country, we're all connected to each other. And so even those individuals, I mean, I wrote about a Marine who was known as Marlboro Man, who was a sniper during the Iraq War, and everyone he killed, he saw their life flash before his eyes. And it, drove him crazy, because he would be behind the gun, and then he'd see the lifetime of this person, flash, their parents, their loved ones, their family. And he didn't understand it, had no context for it. And the writer from the LA Times ended up helping him get into rehab for PTSD and stuff like that. But the idea that you can meet those people and understand it's all part of a journey. So who have you met, Jack, over there that you served with? Any of the other GIs? Anybody that you lost in Vietnam?
One.
One? Please describe. What was he like?
He was fun, but he died.
Okay, what's his first name? Or begins with a letter?
W.
W. And have you seen this guy since you've been on the other side?
Yes.
And what do you mean by it was fun? It was fun while you were on the planet, or what's it like to see him now?
I'm not picturing anything.
Okay, again, just like Hazel, you get to a question where there's no answer, and it either means I don't want to go down that path, or it means this is not important to our conversation. I appreciate that, Jack. But I appreciate you saying that. You have run into somebody that you served with who died in Vietnam that you've met on the other side. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, I've got a question for you, Jack. I was walking by the Vietnam Memorial some years ago, and I went by a panel, and I was overcome with emotion. I didn't even realize I was walking by the memorial. I was actually looking the other direction, but suddenly this emotion came over me. And then about 2 or 3 years later, I went back, and with a camera, I walked down the memorial, and I got to the same place. And suddenly I felt overwhelmed with emotion, and I filmed all the names to see, did I know somebody? But I discovered that I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody on that panel. And so I'm asking you, what's going on? Is it that people are depositing their emotions in that location?
Yes.
And so how is it that their emotions stay there? Is it like a frequency? Like a ball of light?
It's an implant, imprinted.
It's an imprint. Is it imprinted in the wall itself, or is it just in the etheric space around that particular panel?
The wall.
Very interesting, because I also had that experience walking into Anne Frank's house, where I went into the room where all the books were that had been written about her or by her, translated. But when I walked out of that room, the feeling went away. But then when I walked back into the room, it all came back. So I understand what you're saying. It's an imprint of the people who go there, and they leave that emotion behind. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, so let me ask you something about your son here. What's a place that he needs to go to where he can meditate? I mean, it could be a park, it could be a boat, could be on a boat trip, could be fishing, it could be in a garden, could be some. What's the best place where he can communicate with you?
The lake?
The lake. Does he still have your boat, Jack?
No.
Have you had any bush beers since you've been back there?
No.
Can you have beer?
No.
Well, I mean, I've met people who can smoke. And as somebody said, actually it was Janis Joplin, she said, you can drink whiskey here, but you can't get drunk because you don't have a brain. I thought that was interesting. So I guess bush beer, the flavor of having a beer isn't that important, is it? Or maybe it is. Are you just not telling us?
Not really.
Okay, not really that important. Okay, I just want to point that out. People do say you can smoke a drink, but nothing happens. Your lungs are going to be fine. I've had many, people light up a cigarette while I'm talking to them. I mean, it's very unusual. I mean, I'm talking to somebody who says, oh, this is weird. The guy just took out a lighter and lit a cigarette. Anyway, very good. Oh, well, let me ask you that, Jack. Did you get a lighter when you served? Did they give you a Zippo?
No.
I was going to say, how come you didn't give that to Jack? Did you give Jack any souvenirs from Vietnam?
No.
No. Okay. Well, I did have somebody come through and he pulled out a lighter. And so I asked the person seeing this person to read what it said on the lighter, and it turned out to be his unit in Vietnam. Very specific, whatever that was. Anyway, I mean, I know GIs are issued a lighter. I guess you just didn't want it, or you didn't care for it, or what was that? What happened there? You just didn't want a lighter? You didn't smoke?
Never offered.
They didn't give you your lighter. Okay. Something for Carl to complain about. How can I say? It is standard issue. A Zippo. Anyway, I appreciate that. So Jack, what do you want Carl to focus on? So going into the boat, is that a way to do it? What is it? It's an unusual conversation for us to have, but please, what is it you want? And he doesn't have to respond aloud, but would you put into his mind, what is it that you want him to focus on?
Family.
Oh, okay, very good. And Carl knows what that means. And Hazel, I'm going to ask you the same question.
Family.
Family. All right, very good. And neither one of you guys are going to give us lottery numbers?
No.
Why not?
No answer.
No answer. Well, they know that I know the answer. 90% of the people who win big lotteries wish they'd never bought a ticket. That's a bit high percentage. All right, so I just want to thank you, Jack, and I want to thank you, Hazel, and your friends who came forward, and your great-grandfather, and I think your grandmother. We want to thank all these folks that have been here today. And when Carl listens back to this conversation, he's going to say, what? What did I say? What's happening? I don't understand. I'm making it all up. And I just want people to realize we do make everything up in our minds. I mean, I'm sitting at the Père Lachaise Cemetery as a backdrop on my Zoom call from a photograph I took there many years ago. Great cemetery, an appropriate place for me to be sitting in front of. The point is, it's an artificial reality. And the artificial reality we just created allows us the possibility of a conversation with our loved ones. It allows us to have a give and take. so that we can, of course, they understand how much we miss them and how much we love them. But, we can ask a question like, what is it you think I should focus on? And they could say work. They could say cutting the grass. They could say a million things. And of course, when they say family, they know that you know what they mean. And of course, there's an extended family that Carl has now. They're everyone listening to his show. They're all the people that are tuned in, because we're all connected. As much as we don't believe we are, as much as we want to believe that we're disconnected and not part of each other's journey or path. Every question, as you go back through this, every question I asked was about the connections. His dad talked about his life planning session, why he chose a journey that ended up in Vietnam. Some people didn't choose that, as we know, but he did. And there's courage and camaraderie and defense, as he said. It's defense, of course, of family and of country. But whether or not people can argue whether that was a necessary event. I mean, I had the experience of meeting McNamara, and I said, why is it that the United States chose to back Pakistan instead of India? It's a democracy. They speak the same language, and they're capitalists. He said, "Well, they're sons of bitches." That was his answer. And I thought, well, that's why we ended up in Vietnam, because I heard him say in the movie, Fog of War, if we had realized that it was a civil war in Vietnam and not the Cold War, we never would have gone. And, how do you say that to the 60,000 people who died and, his friend W and his family? So the point being, we do these things, and we do fight, and we do love, and we do connect. But it is key to hear that they're never far away. And I just want to point this out. Carl and I agreed to do this. We didn't know where we were going to go. Had no idea.
I had no clue.
No clue. But I've been doing this for at least 15 years with people, and 20 years with, hypnotherapy. And everything that was said is repeated in the research and in the text and in the transcripts and in the footage. This is not, and if it wasn't, I'd say it. I'd say, no, well, that was weird, because nobody ever says that. Well, that's what they say. They talk about, and of course I'm leading questions. I have a lot of leading questions because I've, done the research. And I know that, a leading question is what people, they balk at that, but they could say no. People on the flip side can say no. That's not the way it happened.
Or not show anything. I didn't
plan my life. That sort of. Go ahead. Sorry.
They could just not show anything. I was drawing blanks.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And I've learned not to judge. So when you ask someone a question and you get blank, you think, did I ask the wrong question, or I can't talk to them anymore? Or, you put it on yourself, and the answer could be, they're not allowed to tell you the answer. They know it would disrupt your path and journey if you knew the answer. Or they don't know the answer, and they don't really want to think about it because they're doing their best to maintain the connection. So it happens, instead of considering a non-answer to be nothing, consider it to be, change the subject, please. Or ask me another question.
Makes sense.
I think it does. What I'm doing is not illogical. I don't know. It is unusual. Let's put it that way. But like I say, I've been doing this. RichardMartini.com is where you can find a guided meditation. And I've helped quite a few people talk to loved ones, learn new information, have an experience where they learn something new from people off stage. But the most important thing I've heard, and I just want to repeat it for your audience, I've heard it over and over again. Everything is going to be okay. We don't really think that's an important sentence. But every word is paramount. Everything is going to be okay. We all get out of here alive. We all wind up going home. We all reconnect with our loved ones. And we learn lessons along the way. And yes, we have difficulties, but oh my gosh, what courage it takes to choose a lifetime where you're going to go over and fight a war that nobody wants you to fight. That takes courage. Go ahead.
Do you have other web addresses or places where they can look for your books?
Sure. If you want to find all my books and stuff like that, Richard Martini, anywhere, just Google that. My podcast is called Hacking the Afterlife, and that's on YouTube or iTunes or all that stuff. Jennifer Schaefer and I do it. You can find that at martinizone.com, or you can just go to YouTube and type in Hacking the Afterlife. richmartini.com. I own that too. That's got links to all of my films, all of my books. But I want to say this. People have said to me, you're selling the afterlife. And I'm like, no, I'm just sharing my research, and in book form, yeah, okay. But at the Hacking the Afterlife, we have over 200 or 300 conversations with people on the other side. If you can put up with watching them all, you'll see there's movies in there. There's all kinds of stuff. There's actually a hypnotherapy session that I uploaded that Dr. Helen Wamba had done decades ago. You can learn a lot by just allowing yourself, and this came from Harry Dean Stanton, the great actor who was a skeptic, who we talked to on the other side, and he said, tell people to believe in the possibility of an afterlife, and then they won't waste another minute of their lives arguing about it like I did. And he did. And by the way, you can see him say that in the movie Hacking the Afterlife on Amazon Prime or Gaia, along with Bill Paxton, talking to Bill Paxton, one of my films, Arkansas boy, Texas, lived in Arkansas, and FlipSide, A Journey into the Afterlife. That's my first film. That's the first documentary.
It also available on Gaia?
Yeah, that's also on Gaia. So you can sign up for Gaia for a test run and cancel. So after a week, but for a week, you can watch those 3 movies. You can watch them all in one day. But they have pretty much all that stuff. And then see what part of this, what I'm talking about, you find interesting. I have 13 books out there. Pick one. FlipSide, and people seem to like FlipSide a lot. It's the first one. It kind of gives groundwork for how I got to this place. But if there's anything I said that piqued your interest, like Amelia Earhart, there's a lot of, and by the way, if you don't like what I'm saying, get a refund. I tell people, come on, read the thing and turn it back in. You get your money back. What's the big beef? Just allow that maybe there's something out there I might learn.
Truth. Keep your mind open and always learn from it.
Yeah, knock on wood.
But Richard, it's coming up on the top of the hour, and it has been an honor to have you here.
Well, thank you. And thanks for letting me take you into the boat, Carl. That was fun. Oh, we forgot to have a bush. We forgot to open up that cooler.
That was my dad's beer of choice.
Isn't that funny? Well, he's not drinking it on the flip side, let me just tell you. So there you go.
Maybe because it got him in trouble a few times here on Earth. So
and they're probably a little warm by now.
Yes.
All right, my friend. Thanks so much. Great to meet you, and nice talking to your audience.
Thank you, and you never know, we may want to have you back in the future.
I'd love that.
Thank
you be good.
Sir. You too.
All right.
Night-night.
Night-night.
Join host Carl Richardson as he interviews top guests in various fields of study. Now, airing live every Saturday night from 9 to 11 Central Time and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern.
Tonight's conversation reminds us that the mysteries don't fade with time. They follow humanity through every generation. Questions about death, consciousness, and what may exist beyond this world have echoed through ancient temples, whispered through hospital rooms, and traveled with us beneath the stars since the beginning of civilization itself. A special thanks tonight to our guest Richard Martini for sharing his experience and research into the possibility that our existence may continue long after the physical body is gone. Whether you agree with everything discussed tonight or not, these are the kinds of conversations meant to challenge us, to make us think a little deeper when the rest of the world is asleep. But next week, we trade the mysteries of afterlife for something far more intimidating and far more terrifying. Imagine taking a quiet walk through the wilderness, hearing your dog suddenly begin barking somewhere ahead, and within minutes, finding yourself standing face to face with something impossible. Next Saturday night, Midnight Frequency Radio welcomes Dr. Jonathan Reed, the man behind one of the most frightening alien encounter stories ever brought before the public. For nearly 30 years, the Jonathan Reed story has remained a lightning rod in UFO research circles. Reed tells us that during a 1996 hike through a remote wooded area, he encountered a strange humanoid entity. After discovering his dog had been attacked, what happened next would become the foundations for claims involving physical evidence, bizarre photographs, alien artifacts, mysterious video footage, and accusations of intimidation and suppression. We'll also explore the documentary Contact in the Woods, which dives into the encounter, the evidence, the skepticism, and the enduring mystery that still surrounds the case today. Next week, we'll step into the woods with Dr. Reed himself and hear the story directly from the man who lived it. Until then, keep questioning the world around you, because sometimes the strangest stories are the ones that refuse to disappear. For the late Art Bell, Joshua Stark, Josh Cheers, and Lady Penelope, I'm Carl Richardson, and this has been Midnight Frequency Radio. Good night, and we'll meet again somewhere beyond the edge of ordinary reality.